Grounded's next update is going to change combat and the creature AI forever. It's going to completely revolutionize how you play Grounded. Here's why.
Fixes to combat. We are doing, in preparation for our 1.0 release, we're doing a lot of other changes that will be coming in. We are doing armor upgrades. We're making a lot of changes to how armor works, weapon damage. We're looking at durability. That's been a big issue. So we're making some adjustments on that. Stamina is another thing that we're taking a good look into, and we're looking at creature AI, making lots of adjustments. So I think that's something that's also coming.
That was Adam, and I'm sure you might have already seen me talk about this a lot with the upcoming changes and suggestions about things that might be appearing in the next update. This is a big move. If you've been a big fan of Grounded, I'm sure you guys are pretty well versed in blocking now and doing perfect parries. Now, me, I'm not that great at playing Grounded, it has to be said. I often get absolutely owned by the smallest of creatures, and I'm only just now learning how to parry better, as you can see from the stream that I did a couple days ago. But this is why combat is going to change massively. We've all kind of got used to the animations and the attack patterns of a lot of the bugs. And I say all of us, but there is definitely a hardcore player following that have stuck with Grounded this whole time. And so many of you are experts. So many creators can literally just go around absolutely blocking almost any creature because they've just learned how to play the game super well. So anything that makes it more fresh, I am all down for. Hopefully it's going to be good. Sometimes there are teething issues with these changes. As you heard Adam say, making changes to stamina, the way that armor works. Does that mean we're going to get a whole bunch of new perks? Does that mean they're going to be differently labeled? Are we going to get different heavy sets applied to them or descriptions? Are they going to slow us down more? There's all sorts of things they could be doing in this next update, which we think is going to be going live either on the 23rd of April or maybe the 27th. Depending on who you ask, but I would say the majority of people I see say it, that lots of these bugs can kind of one-shot a lot of players fairly early in the game too easily. Especially even on easy mode, they're finding that some players are struggling with the difficulty of the game. But then you go and ask a whole bunch of actual players that have played the game for ages, they'll say the game is too easy. Now we've got access to tier 3 materials and weapons. It does mean that a lot of the creatures we've been facing, they are kind of just one-shotted away now mostly, if you've gone and got the termite axe as well as the black ox hammer. Not to mention the way that you can upgrade all your weapons with the different kind of elemental statuses like spicy and salty. It means that for a lot of pro players, the game has maybe become too simple. But as I said, I do believe that the majority of players that will be picking up Grounded when it's full released, they may still struggle. They may find that it's actually still pretty tough. You think back to your first days in Grounded, how often you got owned by orb weavers or even just a larvae. So there has to be some fine balancing made here. They don't want to make it too difficult to put off newer players that will be picking up in the next few months, but they also do need to keep satisfied some of the longer term players and keep adding that challenge. So how do they do it? Well, the more new areas that we get to explore, I think the gentle curve that we'll see in terms of difficulty, and that's what might be being applied now. They're getting some of the areas ready for maybe them starter zones to be kind of rebalanced, but they're also going to be thinking about the future when these tier 3 weapons and new brand armor sets are going to be much more in use and maybe not as OP once we start exploring some of the new areas in the map. Now, of course, we're not going to get some of them new areas in the map until full 1.0 release. But of course they still want some feedback about these changes now because they don't want to necessarily be doing massive changes once the game's actually hit 1.0. So what I think will happen is they are going to make some of the creatures a little bit easier to fight. We will find that it will still be pretty easy for the majority of kind of pro Grounded players. I think they might make it a bit more forgiving in terms of stamina use and make some of the armor sets a little bit more usable, especially early in the game. This of course will ramp up, as I said, once we explore other areas, that's when things are going to get tougher and harder and we're going to need some of these really higher tier weapons and armors, and that's when we're going to find that the bugs become harder. Now that's just my opinion based on stuff that I've seen. Who knows, I could be completely wrong and they just feel that the game is way too easy across the board and they're just going to make it even harder. It is a problem with early access games. Big fans love this game, you give loads of feedback, but when you're only getting feedback from hardcore players, you generally do forget about all the new people that are going to be picking it up. And trust me when I say, they may have already had 10 million players playing this game, but when it hits 1.0, there will be a huge amount of people that will be picking it up for the first time. Other players that maybe didn't stick with it that long will be returning to see how the game's got on, and so they'll be expecting the game to be fairly balanced. Obviously the armor is a big part of that as well, and changing how the armor works, and especially with the upgrades. Again, it's all about balancing. You don't really need armor upgrades unless you're going to be facing off against more difficult creatures on a regular basis. Now we know that some of the antlion stuff and obviously the Black Ox beetle armors, they're really good for some of these later game areas. But are they going to be strong enough once we go and investigate whatever they're putting next to the shed? Probably not. So that's when we're going to have the armors being upgraded and be more useful for. Till then though, it does mean that once we unlock the ability to upgrade armors, it could again become a little bit too easy for a while. And I do think a lot of people forget about this. I see some complaints from players sometimes wondering why we can't have like extra stuff going on, why we don't have more slots in a hotbar, or why can't we carry more. But we do have the tools to increase that stuff. That's what the teeth are for, the molars. You can upgrade your stack sizes by collecting them all. At the moment though, we're limited. There's only a certain amount of molars in the game because we haven't got all the areas. And so that means you can only upgrade to a certain point. So I don't think the game necessarily needs you to be able to hold more items. We just need to be able to have full access to more milk molars, or maybe make some of them a bit easier, or just put even more on the map. Combat has become stale for a lot of OG grounded players. You know exactly how pretty much every creature in the game moves, and they don't really have as much randomness. They did revamp it a couple times during early access, and it's much better than it ever used to be. And that's the next phase which Adam spoke about, with the AI being improved. And that could be the most exciting feature of all. Imagine not being able to cheese creatures anymore just by jumping on a twig, or getting them stuck in between a rock like I've done with this wolf spider. The devs are going to be at PAX on April 23rd, that's why we think there might be a surprise update that day. But in the description for this conference that they're going to be expoing at, they talk about can spiders jump? Now unless there's something I've just not really noticed, they don't really jump, they more kind of pounce on you. But what if the spiders will be able to jump up to higher places? What if that wolf spider turned round, jumped on top of the rock and absolutely ruined me? This is going to be great, but that does need to be balanced because some of these creatures are OP, and it does feel like, especially early game, you can't really kill them unless you get really lucky or you do use cheesy methods. And with so much of the game relying on different bug parts that you get from some of these, you may never discover certain weapons, tools and armors until way late in the game, once you've actually managed to finally get brave enough to go and kill something more harder. So this is why I think it's going to be a massive change. Adam might have understated it there, but even if they're just adjusting some values with stamina, even if they're only making some of the creatures hit a little bit harder, or possibly have the ability to jump, that is massive in terms of overall changes to the combat. It's going to reevaluate how everyone does their guides, which I'm glad for because it means I can do brand new fresh ones. But more importantly, it means it's going to be balancing the game, not just hopefully for older players, but newer players, because that is something that's so important. So I'm sure we're going to get the usual reacts from some of the hardcore YouTubers that cover Grounded. Oh, these changes are horrible. Oh, what are they doing? But give them a break. Let the devs do the stuff they want. We'll see how the improvements go with durability as well. And just bear in mind, stuff that's going to be changed in the very short term, it may be really beneficial once the full game is out with all the different areas to explore. That's something that so many Grounded players, you've got to remember. Let me know in the comment section what you want changed most. Will you be loving it if they ever add a dodge function? Is there an opportunity there to improve the AI even more? With the base defense also being a big part of the improvements with AI, I really do believe that Grounded is changing massively with this update that seemingly seems not as big as some of the others, but in fact it could be the biggest change ever. I'll be there for every step of the way. Until next time, Ratbags, I'll catch you later.